A happy new year to all of you, our wonderful viewers who have taken the time to join us on this broadcast. I know the last time we saw you was last year. We really appreciate you, and we hope that this year is going to be a wonderful, fabulous, fantastic. I don't know of other adjectives, but we wish you the very best of 2022. Today is Wednesday, January 19th of 2022. My name is Victor Ayara, and I welcome you to the 10,000 Family Study Facebook Live event. Yes, the very first for this year. I'm being assisted on this program by our ASL interpreter, Christina Grant. Thank you very much. And this is for our hard of hearing community, who we really appreciate, could also join us. Let me go straight by asking you before I introduce my guests, and I don't mean to scare you. Do you know that even healthy people can be affected seriously by air pollution? And worse still, air pollution in one of the places that we consider the safest, our homes. Let me welcome you to this event today. We will be talking about Don't Breathe, the dangers of radon gas, and how to keep your family safe. There could be a deadly intruder hiding in your basement. Radon is a radioactive gas that has no color and no smell, and exposure to it can lead to serious health conditions. My guest today is Dan Tranter. Dan is a supervisor of the indoor air unit at the Minnesota Department of Health. He has been with the indoor air since 2001 and has a Master of Public Health degree from the University of Minnesota. The indoor air unit conducts research, education, and outreach concerning indoor air quality, especially radon, mold, and carbon monoxide. Unit staff also regulate smoking in public places and air quality in enclosed sports arenas and radon professional licensure. Dan enjoys spending time with his partner and two girls, mostly focused on the girls' hockey in the winter. He also enjoys gardening, cooking, jogging, traveling, walking his dogs, and recently started golf. Welcome with me, Dan Trenter. Thank you so much, Dan, for taking the time to join us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. And I know that we have presented your credentials, but what can you tell us about yourself? For instance, maybe why did you get into this kind of work? I know that many people would say will never be bothered about air pollution because they talk all the time, so they don't really take the time to take a deep breath, so they wouldn't bother anyway. But why did you get into this line of work?
Well, I was always interested in public health in college, and then I went to graduate school. I picked the subject of environmental health and went to the University of Minnesota. And while I was in graduate school, I started to learn about indoor air quality. I learned about pollutants like radon and mold and carbon monoxide. And that kind of piqued my interest because we're indoors in the winter in Minnesota pretty much all the time, almost all the time. And even around the world, we everyone spends a lot of time indoors, and we don't really think about the air we're breathing. We kind of take it for granted. You know, people think about the water they drink, they think about the food they eat, but the air is just there, and you're constantly inhaling. And there's a lot of different types of pollutants that can be found indoors, and it can be complicated subject, which is also makes it fascinating to study. And so I decided to get into indoor air quality to learn about all these different indoor air pollutants and how our homes and our behaviors interact with these pollutants and how we can protect ourselves. And I ended up working at the Minnesota Department of Health, and I've been enjoying my job here now for 21 years.
I mean, I obviously for one to do something for over 2 decades, that must be something that you enjoy. Now, for our viewers who are just joining us, I know that you probably are asking, are they going to give the $20 gift card? Yes, we will be giving you that today, but that's not going to happen right now. So you have to stay and be engaged, stay connected, ask us questions. And of course, wherever you are watching this video from, we welcome you. People outside of Minnesota, we welcome you wherever you are. So, how do you get the gift card? Continue to engage, bring your questions. We have the professional, not me, but Dan Tranter, who would be answering those questions for you today. And also, if you happen to miss this interview or any of the other interviews that we've had, remember that you can find us on 10KFS, that is TENKFS, University of Minnesota. That's on YouTube. And of course, on Facebook, we're still on Facebook. That is www.facebook.com/10KFS. Thank you so much. Now, let's talk about radon. What is radon? I must confess to you, because of course I I I am ignorant about a lot of things. Radon is one of them. I never heard of it before. What is radon?
Radon is a type of radiation. It's naturally found in our soil across the country, across the world. It's naturally present because we naturally have uranium, right? You've probably heard of uranium. It's used in nuclear power plants and lots of different applications. But a lot of people haven't heard of radon, or they kind of heard about it, but they're not really sure what it is. So we have uranium in our soils, and that uranium over time breaks down and becomes radon, which is a gas. And because it's a gas, radon can float around through the soil, and it makes its way up to the top of the soil, and then it goes into the outdoor air. So we have a little bit of radon in our outdoor air that we're breathing all the time. But what can happen is it can enter into our homes through gaps, cracks, and openings in the foundations of our homes, and it can build up to high concentrations. So when it's at high concentrations in our homes, as we're breathing it in over time, over weeks and months, that radiation has a lot of energy, and it can release its energy inside our lungs. And that can damage our lung tissue. And as the lung tissue gets damaged over time, that can lead to tumors, and unfortunately, it can lead to lung cancer. Radon is considered the leading cause of lung cancer in non-smokers. And in the United States, the EPA has estimated 21,000 lung cancer deaths every year are caused by radon exposure.
21,000. Damn, that is a scary number. That is a lot of people. So, what you're telling us is that this is something that could affect perfectly healthy people? Or is there a predisposition? Is there a group of people who would be predisposed to being affected by radon?
Yeah, so with cancers, there's a lot of different factors that can affect whether you develop cancer over time. Some of it's based on your genes and your genetics. Some of it's based on your diet, lifestyle factors, um, what you drink, what you eat. And of course, smoking is very important to lung cancer. We know smoking is the leading cause of lung cancer. After that, radon is the second leading cause. Now, if you smoke and you're exposed to high radon levels, it has like a multiplier effect where the risk is higher than each one on its own added together. So yes, there are a lot of different factors that go into lung cancer and whether you develop lung cancer. There's ongoing research to see if radon causes other cancers, causes other lung illnesses, but at this time, what we know is radon causes lung cancer, and so many cancers you can't really prevent it, or you can only make a small difference to prevent it. But with lung cancer, you can really make a big difference in reducing your risk by not smoking and or quitting smoking, and also testing and reducing radon if it's high. So that can make a big difference in reducing your risk of lung cancer.
I appreciate that answer. So already we're having people who are very interested in this question, in this topic. Judy Morneau. Judy is asking, how long does it take for radon exposure to cause long damage?
The damage happens, but it happens at a low level if you're only exposed for days. I guess a comparison would be sort of like smoking. If you smoke a few cigarettes for a few days, the risk is very, very small, what we'd call a negligible risk. Once you start getting exposed for many months, and certainly for years, then your risk does increase substantially and significantly. It also, of course, depends on how high the radon levels are in your home. If you have exceedingly high radon levels, there could be some increased risk even over the course of several weeks. But for most people, when we start to see additional risk, we're talking about several months to, of course, several years of exposure would increase your risk.
So Dan, this is getting scary now. I have to assure you that there are a lot of people like Daniel who is wondering if this is such a big deal. Do you recommend having radon testing done before purchasing a
I do, absolutely. It's
home?
one of our
Would that
main.
be a reason not to close on the property?
Um, we do recommend testing during home sales. The seller could test before they put the house on the market. The buyer could have a test done during the home inspection phase. Many people will have a home inspection done when they're buying a home. You could even wait and move in and do the testing and fix the house if needed at that time. I would not make it a deal breaker. You can test homes before, during the transaction, or after the transaction when you move in. You can fix homes. That's the good news. I know this is alarming and it's concerning, but at the same time, know that we can test our homes. You can test yourself. You can hire a professional. We can fix homes. We recommend hiring a professional to fix homes. That's the good news. It can be fixed. It can be taken care of.
That's so good to know because I mean I also share I share the worry that is expressed by Daniel because I just bought a property and I just moved in. I did all the other testing, but I am not sure if radon was ever tested. But now, if this is such a big problem health wise for the population, expertise and your knowledge and experience in this field, has there been any regulatory framework that could actually make it something that should concern authorities and citizenry and everybody? Is there anything policy wise that actually mandates that this be taken seriously?
Not at the federal level. Each state has its own set of regulations. Some states require licensure. So if you hire somebody, you have some confidence that they know what they're doing and they can test with accuracy and reliability when they're fixing homes. They can do it according to standards. Some states require notification and disclosure when you sell a home. The seller has to tell the buyer, has there been any testing? If no, there's warnings, information, and a fact sheet that's provided to buyers. In some states, there's requirements for testing in child care centers. Also, in some states, there's requirements to test in schools. So, in some states, new homes that are being built have to be built with radon-resistant features. So every state is a little different. There's different types of regulations out there that help raise awareness and help testing and mitigation is being done.
We apologize for that break in transmission. These things happen with technology, and thankfully we're back. And just before you know, we were interrupted by technology. Dan, you were talking about a requirement in certain spaces, public spaces and schools and all of that. Please, can you continue from there?
Yeah, it just depends on the state. So some states require testing and mitigation, meaning reducing the radon in schools or in child care centers. Some states require new homes are built with radon resistant features. Some states require disclosure and notification. to home buyers. So what I would suggest is check with your state radon program, check with your state health department to see what requirements and protections exist to protect public health in your state.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your shedding more light on this, Dan. But we have a question from Kathy. Kathy says, "Do air purifiers help mitigate radon even a little bit?" And Becky also asked if basement ventilation would help with this kind of situation. Dan?
Air purifiers probably would not help reduce radon. It can get complicated, but as a general, simple answer, I'd say what works is called a radon mitigation system. But really the first step is to learn about radon, to go to your state health department's website, to go to the EPA website, learn the basics, take 5 or 10 minutes, and then get a test device. You can get test kits at hardware stores. You can get test kits sometimes through your city, county, or state health agencies. You can buy test kits online. And so there's a lot of ways to get radon test kits. You could also hire a professional. In some states, they're licensed, so you could hire a licensed person. If there's no licensing in your state, you can hire what's called a certified professional to do the testing. So get the testing done, find out if you have high radon levels. And then the next step is what we call mitigation, which is hiring a qualified person, certified or licensed in some states, to install a radon mitigation system. And I'll show you the key piece of a radon system is a fan like this. So they'll put a pipe that starts underneath your home, and it'll attach to this fan. This fan will go outside or up in your attic. And there's another pipe that comes out of the top of the fan. And that pipe then goes up through your roof or up the side of your house. And this fan runs continuously. It's plugged in, and you can kind of see here the fan blade spinning. So that fan is running all the time. Imagine like your bathroom fan. These are more powerful and durable, but kind of similar in some respects. It runs all the time. It pulls the air out from underneath your home and vents it outside. So instead of the radon coming in your home, it goes up this pipe. And
So it has
out.
some kind of suction quality to it, where it actually
Yeah.
sucks out the gas. I see.
In a way, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I know that a lot of people would leave this program considering having those tests conducted. Now, is it possible that a property or a house would not have any radon at all? Or is there a level that you say, is there a level that should get people worried? What do you say?
Yeah, there is a national radon action level established by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. That action level is 4.0, and the units are called picocuries, that's radiation in the air, in a liter of air. So 4.0 picocurie per liter, or PCI/L. And you're always going to find a little bit of radon in the indoor and outdoor air because the soil is constantly releasing radon into the outdoor air. So outdoors, on average, we might see about 0.4, 0.5 picocuries per liter of radon. So you can't really get below that. If you can get down to outdoor levels, that's great. That's an excellent result. But 4.0 is the action level. So if you're over 4 inside your home, we and federal agencies and other states recommend taking action, meaning installing one of those radon reduction systems I was describing. And those systems are very effective at reducing radon to below 4. Now remember, 4 is kind of a starting point, it's kind of your minimum target. Ideally, you'd be down to 2 or 1 or even less. The lower your exposure to radiation, the better. So definitely try to get your exposure indoors under 4. but if possible, get it down to 2 or 1 or even less.
Judy is asking, will radon level vary with seasons? For instance, do we have more radon gas, floating around during the winter, for instance, or is it lower during the summertime or spring? How does that work?
Yeah, it can change by season, certainly. And we've done some research here in Minnesota, but even nationally, there's been some research to show that levels can be different from season to season. Not necessarily a huge difference, but maybe a small difference of 10, 20, 30%, where it's a little bit higher when your home is closed up and you're heating it uh, compared to when your home is open. When you have your windows open, you have a lot of ventilation. That may reduce radon levels. But every home is different. Sometimes homes test lower in the winter and actually test higher in the summer. It depends on what part of the country you're in, right? I'm thinking of Minnesota, cold winters closed up. Now, Victor, you're down in Georgia, I believe. I don't know what the temperature's like, but in the winter you might have your windows open for all I know, certainly in Florida. So it kind of depends where you live. We do recommend testing at any time of the year. Just keep your windows and doors closed when you test. And you might want to test in the summer and then test again in the winter to see if it changes.
Uh, much then, and I think there are some people who should what you do to mitigate radon, be how high or low the level is in your home. Should it be dependent, or would you tailor your mitigation effort to the level of radon?
Uh, Generally, it's the same technology, meaning a pipe that starts under your house, the pipe goes up through your house or up the side of the house. There's a fan in line. What can change is if you have really high radon levels, they might need a larger fan or a different type of fan. They might need a wider pipe. They might need to have two pipes, two suction points that come together. So the general concept is the same in most homes. It just becomes some minor details can be a little bit different.
Well, thank you so much, Dan. If you're just joining us, this is a 10,000 Families Study Facebook Live event. And today we are talking, the title of our conversation today is Don't Breathe, the Dangers of Radon Gas and How to Keep Your Family Safe. Wherever you from, engage each other. Let's engage, most importantly, the expert who is going to shed more light on whatever questions or common myths that you may have. So, and that also, if you're not able to stay long, remember that there is an incentive for you to stay. We have a gift card which we're going to give at the end of this program. Okay. You just might be the winner of that gift card today. Now, Dan, what are some common myths or misunderstandings about radon testing?
Yeah, we've heard many misunderstanding, misconceptions, myths over the years. Some people think, well, if my neighbor's radon is low, my house must be low. That's not necessarily true. Every house is a little different. The amount of radon under the house can be different. Some people think, well, if I live in a really old and drafty house, I'm paying a lot to heat the house or cool the house, the radon levels must be low. Not necessarily. If you have a drafty house, that could mean you also have a lot of air coming from the soil. I've heard people think, well, I live on a certain type of soil. I live on sandy soil. I live on clay soil. There really aren't simple sort of distinctions we can make based on soil type. I would really say look at your state's map, see what's going on in your community. Nationally, what we see is about 7% or 1 in 15 homes have tested high, but in some areas it's much, much higher. In Minnesota, for example, it's actually 40%. It's 2 in 5. So check with your state, look at your local data to see what the radon levels are. But at the end of the day, we recommend everyone test across the country, and if you have high radon levels, to fix it. There's some other myths we've heard, like people might think, well, I have an air exchanger, like a heat or energy recovery ventilator. I have a ventilation system in my home, therefore I don't need to think about radon. Unfortunately, sometimes these air exchangers, they're not installed, maintained, or tuned properly, so they can actually cause more radon to come in. And the air exchanger, even if it's working properly, may not do enough to reduce the radon levels very much. We also, hear sometimes from people, well, I tested once, I don't need to test again. And, levels can change. So we do recommend testing every few years. And also, if something's changed in your home, you have new heating and cooling, you have cut holes through the walls or the floors, we do recommend testing again at those times as well if something's changed that could affect the radon. But otherwise, we do recommend testing every couple of years to make sure nothing has changed. Some people think, if I don't have a basement, I don't need to worry about radon. Radon's only a problem in basements. Well, again, that's not necessarily true, because if your home is slab on grade, crawl space, you can still have air coming in, you can still have radon coming in. So bottom line is, any home in the country can have a radon problem, and the only way to know is to test your home.
Dan, thank you so much. And I really, I want to hope that all of our audience members are learning as much as I am at this point, because this is a lot of very, very useful information for all of us. And I know I know what you're thinking right now. I know what you're thinking. How much does this even cost? It's the cost of testing.
Yeah, everyone's thinking about the money, right? That's the hard part, is writing the...
Me too.
Yeah. It's easy to learn about it. It's easy to test.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Madonna specifically asked that. I need to make sure that she knows that we are following your question, Madonna. Madonna says, what is the cost? That's the big question now.
Of course, yeah. So it's actually kind of inexpensive to do the testing. Some cities, counties, states might actually give out free test kits. So you could check with your city or county health department or your state. If they don't have test kits, you can go online. There are different labs. Sometimes your state health department will have a link to specific labs where you can buy test kits. So here's a very common test kit that's used across the country. And it looks like a cardboard pouch, okay? So it's actually an envelope. I think I'm holding it up. So here we go. You can see it's like a self-addressed envelope back to the lab. So you can buy this test kit from the lab for, I think it's $17 or $18 for a test kit. In some states, it's a little cheaper if there's a subsidy to reduce the cost. So think about $15 to $20, maybe less, to get a test kit like this. So you fill out the information on the back. Make sure it's not expired. There's an expiration date. And you fill out all the information, your name, and when you started, when you stopped. What you do with this kind of kit is you hang it. And you can hang it from a piece of string, like in the lowest part of your home where you spend time. Maybe that's a basement, or maybe that's your main level. And you can hang it. If you don't want to hang it, you can put it on a shelf, and the air comes in over here. And if you listen carefully, I don't know if you can hear that. It kind of sounds like sand or salt. There's actually granulated charcoal inside this kit, and the radon sticks to that granulated charcoal. So then after a couple of days, you take out this insert bit that just keeps the mouth open. You seal it up, send it to the lab, and after about a week or two, you should get your test results back. But anyway, it's quite inexpensive to do a test. If you want to hire a professional, say you're buying a home, it's probably a good idea to hire a professional, because you don't know what's happening in that home. You don't control the home, the seller does, so you're the buyer. So you want an expert to come in and do the testing to ensure the house is closed up and there's no tampering. So these types of devices are used by professionals. It's called a continuous radon monitor, or a CRM, and it's got some controls on the front. The air comes in the side. And again, this is placed for a couple of days in the lowest part of the home. The nice thing about these devices is they have tamper detection features. So if the home seller intentionally maybe or unintentionally moves the device, it might detect it. Or if they open the windows and doors, which they shouldn't do, but if they do, it can detect changes to the environment, like changes in temperature and relative humidity. So that's why it's useful to have a professional do a test when you're buying a home with a device like this. It's going to depend where you live. A home inspector might charge you an extra $150 or $200 to do this part as part of a home inspection, to do this test.
Wow, thank you very much. And Dan, it's amazing because I personally would like to check this out and see what I find out if I do the testing in my home. So thank you so much. And we have another question here, which is I'm going to get to in a second. Daniel says, "Is it worth getting a mitigation system even if you have low levels?" What's your answer to Daniel?
Yeah, I think one way to look at it is what is your sort of risk tolerance? What are you comfortable with? But as a general guideline, we say if you're over 4.0, we highly recommend it. Um, Definitely if you're over 4.0 and you've tested properly and you've tested an area, you're spending some time, maybe 1 or 2 hours a day. So you get the testing done. If you're over 4.0, fix the house. If you're between 2 and 4, you might still want to fix the house because remember that our radon professionals, uh, usually they guarantee a reduction to below 4. You should ask them, okay, are you going to guarantee a reduction to below 4? If you're between 2 and 4, you should ask them, can you guarantee a reduction to below 2? Depending on the home, they might be confident and say, yeah, I'll guarantee that reduction to below 2. Because ideally we want our radon exposure to be as low as possible, as low as reasonably achievable. So in some homes, it's a reasonable target to get down to 1 or even less. So again, talk to the professional, and depending on your comfort level, you might want to fix the house even at levels around 2.
Well, thank you so much, Dan. And I just want to thank Cami, who is already sharing information about how to get kits. Cami Antoinette Mercado, thank you so much for helping everybody out. It just shows that you are a very good neighbor, which brings me to my next question to you, Dan. Dan, if you find a high level of radon in your house, would you, as a good neighbor like Cami, tell your neighbors as well? Is it something that is it information you need to share with other people?
I would encourage it, yeah. If you're comfortable talking to your neighbors and friends and family and spreading this important information, I would highly recommend you talk to people you know. It's really effective when people share their personal stories. I learned about this, I tested it, here's how it worked. It was fairly straightforward. I got my results. It was low and I was feeling more comfortable and reassured by that. Or, it was high. I went and hired a professional. They came in and they installed a radon mitigation system. Those personal stories, those connections often are far more effective than what we can do in government in doing, PSAs or presentations or interviews. So I encourage you to talk one-to-one with your friends, family, and neighbors.
All right. And because you are an expert in this, and of course you know a lot about this, what is your do you think that, according to Jenny's question, Jenny is asking, should you do tests on different sizes of your home, on different sides of your home rather?
Yeah, you can test as much as you want. You can test your basement, main level, upstairs if you want. The test kits are, like I say, reasonably priced, $15 to $20, maybe even less. Um, I would definitely recommend doing more than one test if you have multiple foundations. So, for example, if your home has a basement and there's an addition that's, say, crawl space or slab on grade, it's a good idea to test each foundation in the lowest part of the home where you spend time because each foundation can interact differently um, with the soil. So definitely in that case. Beyond that, sometimes people will test because they're not sure how much time they're spending in the basement, or maybe they don't spend much time in the basement, but they might in the future, but they just want to figure it out right now like what's the difference between the basement and the main level. So that can kind of make sense to kind of test both areas um, to see if you want to fix it now or wait. And if you start to use the lower level, the basement in the future, maybe you don't need to do any more testing. You can just move on to mitigation. But like I say, if you're curious, you could do as many tests as you want to explore the radon levels. If you're like me, you've tested all around your house because you're curious to see what the results are.
I appreciate it, Dan. If you're just joining us, my guest on this edition of this program is the supervisor of the indoor air unit at the Minnesota Department of Health. He has been with the indoor air unit since 2001 and has a Master of Public Health degree from the University of Minnesota. He knows what he's talking about. It's not like me. If I talk about radon, don't take anything I say seriously, but Dan surely knows what he's saying. And now, what is the Minnesota Department of Health doing about radon specifically? What are some of the educational resources, being that this is a very, very important issue?
So we at the Minnesota Department of Health, like most states in the country, we receive a small grant from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. And with that small grant, we do a widespread marketing campaign, including TV, radio, social media, internet, billboards. We buy test kits and we give them out to city and county agencies. Those city and county agencies then can distribute those test kits. We do a lot of presentations and trainings to different types of professionals, real estate professionals, child care providers, school officials, building officials, radon professionals. We research radon trends in Minnesota. We produce reports. We have maps and things that you can look at on our website, but you can also check your state. And by the way, the Centers for Disease Control has a website for the whole country with maps. So you can find data in pretty much every state to learn about radon in your community. Another major program we have is our licensing program. So in Minnesota, like about a third of the states now, 18, 19 states require a specific credentials to be a radon professional. In Minnesota, you have to be licensed by us to do radon testing or do radon mitigation. So we will make sure the person has the right credentials to be licensed. We also inspect the radon testing and mitigation work they do to ensure that the public has high quality, reliable testing and mitigation. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we do.
Thank you very much. And I know that this is also information that we can find when we go to the Minnesota Department of Health website, the mn.gov/radon. And that is it right there on your screen, mn.gov/radon. You can find more information. I'm not asking you to go there now. Now, stay with me. Stay with me. Remember, there's an incentive to do so. Now, January is National Radon Action Month. What should we know about it and what's happening for this special month? How do you commemorate this month?
Yeah, January is National Radon Action Month, and it was designated as such by the EPA many years ago. And the reason January is the month is because our homes tend to be closed up, at least in most of the country, unless you live in a really warm climate. Your home is probably closed up this time of year. So it's a good time to test because your home is closed up, so you might have higher radon levels like we talked about earlier. Also, as you heat your home, that might increase the radon levels too. So that's why January is Radon Action Month. So what we do and many other states do in January, but also across winter, are things like community events, presentations, trainings. We issue press releases to get the media to do stories. We do marketing campaigns, including TV, radio, social media, web, billboards. And different states do other kinds of events and activities. So this is how we try to raise awareness during January and recognize January as National Radon Action Month.
All right. So Judy would like to see public service announcements where can she find them? Like videos and all of those. Where can she find those?
Yeah, so we actually created series of videos in English, Spanish, Somali, and Hmong, and I believe those are linked to the Facebook homepage. So you can watch those videos if you're interested. You can share those videos with people. Some states have their own videos, so I would check your state health department to see if they have their own PSAs and their own videos. Oftentimes you can find them on YouTube even if you were to just search on YouTube, Radon, PSA in your state. So there's different ways to find these videos. The EPA has some videos posted as well. So those are some ways you can find the videos out there.
I appreciate it, Dan. And honestly, I don't know if you have the gift of clairvoyance because you just went into answering the question that Kemi had about different languages when you mentioned that it's available in Somali and Hmong and other languages. So thank you very much. But I want to speak for a constituency that we had not we didn't mean to, not talk about these people, but I want to bring you back home. Okay. What about people who are not owning homes, right?
Mhm.
People who are renting, right? Should they be concerned about Raiden? And is there any policy that mandates landlords to make sure that buildings are radon free or the levels are not crazy? What is it about that? What is going on in that sector in the
Yeah,
rental business?
that's an important issue. So any home can have a radon problem. Any building, not just homes, schools, office buildings, etc. Um, I would recommend you talk to your landlord. Have they ever done testing? Is there a mitigation system? But you don't have to. If you want, you can just test your home yourself, including a rental home. You can see what the radon levels are. If they're high, that's where it can be a little more challenging because you don't control the property, right? If you're a homeowner, you get to decide what happens in your home. You get to decide if you're going to install a mitigation system. In a rental property, you typically can't start cutting holes in floors and walls without permission. Now, the landlord could try to fix the problem themselves, but we do recommend hiring a professional. But do talk to the landlord if you have a high radon level. Share your concern. Some landlords may want to keep you happy as a tenant and will put the radon system in. And by the way, the cost, I think that came up as a question. I may be preempting you, Victor, but it's about $1,500 to $3,000 to install a mitigation system. So that's not a small amount of money, and I recognize that, but it is a very important intervention to protect your health. Um, some landlords would be willing to do that and put that in to protect you and your health. Um, if your landlord's not willing to, then I would say talk to a legal resource to see what options you have. Many states have legal aid or legal services coalition, or they have nonprofit tenants advocacy groups. So I would talk to someone like that to see what legal options you might have in those cases.
All right.
Um,
So the what you're trying to say is that Dan, that there is really no legislation or policy that says, for instance, as a renter, I can break my lease if I find out that the radon levels are high or my health is at risk. I can't just there's nothing that protects me if I decide to take such action. Is that correct?
well, I believe there is a state, Maine, that has protections like that. In fact, they require testing. There may be a couple of other states that require testing in rental homes. So I'm not an expert on every state. Every year it changes what the laws are. Um, and there's at least one state that requires disclosure and notification before you sign the lease. I believe that's Illinois. As far as breaking the lease, I'm not aware of any states at this time that have that, but there are bills that have been introduced in some states, such as Illinois, that would allow you to break the lease. Um, so I would say again, if you're not in one of those states, or even if you are, talk to an attorney or talk to the state health department to see what options and what recourses you might have.
I appreciate it, Dan. And I'm going to step back a little bit because when you mentioned the cost of actually installing those systems, remember we talked about the cost of the testing, which you said is about $15 to $20, right? Now, if I'm going to, after finding out, I need to install a system that will keep me and mine safe. Are there any resources that could help me at least cushion that financial stress, because it's a stressor. I mean, radon can cause lung cancer and serious health effects, but so can just the knowledge of it, and I can't afford it, right? Is there any way I can get help?
Yeah, there are limited resources out there, and it does depend on your state. There may be specific grants for radon in your state, but in many states, what you need to do is look towards your housing agencies, whether at the state level or the city or county level, your health agencies at the city or county level. Some of these agencies have programs. They may have low interest loans. Some of them may have grants. So I'd recommend checking with your city, county, state health and housing agencies to see if there are loans available, if there are grants available. And for example, on our website, we have a link to those resources and people can look into that. And depending on their financial situation and possibly other conditions, they may be eligible for loans or possibly grants.
Absolutely, that's a loan that is worth taking, especially when it has to do with our health and our life. But we also hope that, sometime, Dan, you can take this back to your community of practice, that sometimes you can also advocate for for little kinds of grants, and to be readily available, because I can imagine knowing something like that could potentially harm my family, and I'm totally helpless. I can't do anything about it. So the question, before I forget this question, what are the knowledge gaps? What kinds of questions? What Since you've been in this field for a while, what do you think are the biggest knowledge gaps that we should be covering? That we should be, what should we be doing? What are the kinds of questions that we should be asking to get us to get this awareness to where it should be?
Well, radon, it's a challenging health hazard to raise awareness and get people to test their homes and take individual action. It's challenging to get the attention of decision makers to enact policies, create grant programs, change laws. So it's something that I would like to see study more and get a better understanding about what it, how we encourage people and raise awareness and encourage them to test and mitigate. So that's always something I'm thinking about and trying to learn about, and looking at studies in that respect. Um, More broadly, I'm very interested to know if other types of illnesses can be caused by cancer, or excuse me, by radon, like other types of cancers. Can they be caused by radon, or other types of lung conditions, not even cancers? I'm also interested in the subject of climate change and whether extremes in weather, whether our adaptations, closing our buildings up more, could affect our exposure to radon and perhaps increase our exposure to radon. And at a practical level, and what many of the viewers today might be wondering about are there are these consumer grade testing devices. So I didn't talk about this, but you could go to a hardware store or go online and find digital devices that cost $100 or $200 that are being marketed, but we don't know much about these devices, and they're not approved by the national radon standards for use to determine radon levels. So we don't recommend them, but we want to study them and learn more about them to see if they can be used and if the accuracy changes over time. So, there's kind of like three types of test devices. There's these single-use disposable devices I was telling you about that are about
Hmm.
15 to $20. And then you've got these sophisticated digital devices that professionals use that cost, a couple $1,000 that professionals use, and then there's these test devices in between that are coming to market very quickly that we don't know much about. So I'd like to see and learn more about those types of devices.
All right, thank you very much, the Dan Tranter. If you're just joining us, we have less than 10 minutes actually. Wow, time flies. It doesn't even look like it's been 20 minutes. Well, if you're just joining us, this is 10,000 Families Study Facebook Live events, the very first for this year. And our guest is Dan Tranter of the Minnesota Department of Public Health. And we are very, very lucky to have him at this time, more so because there is, given the pandemic, a lot of people are spending more time at home. Would you agree, Dan? So people are spending a lot of time at home, and we're also in the winter month where we don't really go out that much. So I really appreciate you making the time to be with us. It's very auspicious that you're able to join us. Now, 10,000 Family Study is a long-term study of family health, looking at the influences of environment, lifestyle, and genetics across the life course. Thanks to a new grant for the National Institutes of Health, 10,000 Family Study will send radon kits to study participants across Minnesota to test radon in their homes and follow them over time to see what happens with their health and if radon has any impact on the development of cancers. What is your, when I say your, not personally, but the Minnesota Department of Health Indoor Air Unit's role in the new project, in this initiative by the 10,000 Family Study?
So we're serving as technical advisors to the project and also helping with education and outreach. So I've been meeting with the project staff quite frequently to provide guidance on testing and test kits and where to get test kits and how to do the testing and what you do, the things we're talking about today, what you do if you have high levels, what comes next. And we provided some test kits to get them started, and they're doing some trial runs, practice runs, if you will, to see how the testing is going to go. And I think they'll be working with us to kind of refine their procedures on how they'll do the testing. And I think it's a really interesting study. To get back to my comment earlier is, does radon cause other types of cancers? And this study has the potential to explore that and find some information and results that may help us better understand what all the range of health effects are from radon. But even beyond that, I'm really excited because they potentially are going to be getting into hundreds of homes and helping them test. And there could be thousands of people that learn about radon through this project, that test their homes through this project. And that in itself is very important because, like I said, it can be a challenge to reach different communities and encourage people to test their homes. So I think this project will really help get testing done in a lot of properties, and I'm looking forward to helping the project staff and also helping the people that are testing their home and answering their questions and trying to advise them and guide them with the next steps.
Oh, you are so gracious. Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much. And of course, uh, we are also grateful that you would be working with us. Okay, and we look forward to it. Outside of the 10,000 Family Studies current research, what gives you hope when it comes to radon and people's health? What gives you hope? What can you say? I am hopeful because of.
Mm. Yeah, it's one of those questions I don't necessarily think about day to day, kind of taking a step back and looking at the larger picture. I'm encouraged by the positive trend I see in policies that are being enacted, not just in Minnesota, but nationwide. New laws that are getting implemented that protect people when they're buying homes, that protect people that are buying new construction. So just in Minnesota, for example, in the last 15 years, we've had several new laws that help protect people, reduce their exposure, raise awareness. I'm also encouraged about what seems to be increasing testing and mitigation in many parts of the country and increased awareness. People are thinking more and more about their health and the air they breathe. In the past, I think people kind of take for granted the air they breathe, but now they're thinking, what's in my air, what in my home or in my office? And they're doing things like improving ventilation and putting in air cleaners. And some people start to think about other indoor air pollutants like radon. So it seems like it's an increasing awareness nationally, and there seems to be more testing and mitigation. And a lot of that's also linked back to the policies that are getting enacted around the country, including Minnesota, to protect people from radon.
I appreciate that answer. So thank you very much. And this is going to be my final question to you, Dan. I am retired, so I'm in good health. I have a lot of time on my hands, or I am still working, but I also have the desire to volunteer to do good in the neighborhood or to do good in society. How can I partner as a volunteer with the Minnesota Department of Health or any other local nonprofit to bring this awareness about, to spread this awareness? What should I do?
Yeah, whether you're in Minnesota or another state, I'd encourage you to contact your state health department. That's usually a good place to start to see how you can partner. We partner with a lot of different community organizations and agencies. That can include doing presentations. Like I'll go to community organizations like Rotaries, Lions Clubs. Now I'm doing them virtually, but I hope in the future I'll be able to attend those meetings in person to listen to their concerns and questions, to share my experiences and knowledge. We also have test kits we can distribute to community organizations. So if you're tied into a community group or church group and you want, or any kind of group like that, a nonprofit, and you want some test kits, we may be able to provide you some test kits so that you may do a project with the members of your organization to test their homes. You can help, with your social media. If you have a presence, your organization has a presence, you can share information. You can post articles. We have example articles we can send to you. We have example social media posts we can share with you. We have example news releases or letters to the editor if you want to do that and send that to your local newspaper. So there's all sorts of things an individual can do, and if they're tied in with an organization, they can do some things as well. So I would encourage you to contact your state radon program and have that conversation.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much. You've been very kind. But I said that was my last question, but I lied. How's the golf going? How's the golf going for you? Just started learning how to play golf. How's that going for you?
Oh, the golf, not so well. No, I have a long way to go.
Okay, no, don't worry. We'll talk about that when next we see you. But thank you very much. Our guest has been Dan Tranter, Supervisor of the Indoor Air Unit at the Minnesota Department of Health. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, our ASL interpreter has been Christina Grant. Thank you, Christina, for helping us out. And I want to say special thanks to Clement and Andrea and Sadie, who are behind the scenes. We do have a winner. And our winner of our gift card today is Daniel Franks. Daniel, please share your email address privately with us on Facebook, or email us at 10kfs@umn.edu.com. Watch out for updates on our page for the event in March. My name is Victor Ayara. It's been a wonderful, wonderful, and informative time with Dan Tranter. Until we come your way, stay safe and have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye now.